package, and opportunities for advancement. Put your motivation to work and grow with us at Currency. Visit gocurrency.com/careers to learn more.
When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics club and space club and stuff like that. But what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting clubs? Nah, forget that. How about margarita clubs and old-fashioned clubs? Get to Upside Bar and Lounge for the best clubs in town. Try all 10 varieties of Upside margaritas or old fashions and take home a free souvenir glass. Grab the whole crew and pair it with taco night on Mondays or whiskey Wednesdays. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lake.
I tried to hide my cigarette smoking. Then I was rushed into emergency surgery to repair the damage smoking did to my heart. It shocked everyone because they thought I was healthy. Yet because I smoked, I had a severe heart condition that nearly killed me. My tip is, you may be able to hide your smoking from the world, but you can't hide from the damage smoking does to your body.
Call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com.
On the internet.
KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. This isn't any regular heat. This is nuclear heat. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. Bringing you the latest from the Square Circle on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Here is your host, Jake Bockoven.
That's right. We are back here on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket, ready to talk some wrestling with you. Specifically this week, Money in the Bank, one of the big premium live events that WWE does every year. And this year, the event was pretty good, and I think it was saved by the main event. I don't know if the Money in the Bank briefcase matches were all-timers, but they were at least effective. And there's a couple other matches that we can get through there on Money in the Bank. It's been a couple weeks since we've talked some wrestling, as I have been away, so I'm glad to be back with my tag team partner and partner in crime, Augie Pena. Augie, how's it going? How has the wrestling been for you?
It's been pretty good. You know, this is the Money in the Bank is one of my favorite premium live events that the WWE puts on. And you know, the buildup was okay. You know, wasn't as heavy as I thought it would be. You know, they kind of, I think it was 4 or 5 matches that they had. But other than that, it's been all right. You know, keeping up and all that while you've been gone, you know, trying to keep up with this. So I think we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, there is. There's plenty to talk about over the last month, but certainly we're going to try to focus on Money in the Bank and then kind of go through what we've seen over that time as well. But as you're mentioning, it's kind of interesting. I wasn't all, you know, it's always funny to have a wrestling show because there are admittedly times as adults when you're watching wrestling when it can be pretty lame. So you got to pick your spots here if you're trying to get friends involved and to look. And Money in the Bank would generally be a gimmick match that they do every year that I would say, look at this. This is entertaining. This is fun. You have to, you know, kind of play along because these guys don't know how to climb up ladders, which, generally a lot of us figure out by the time we get to middle school or so. But wrestlers have, problems with it. But whatever the case may be, this is generally a fun time or a good event to show somebody, hey, this is why I watch wrestling still. It's fun, entertaining, all of that. And this, going into this match, I just didn't know if I had that feeling. It just didn't feel like it had the build-up despite the Money in the Bank angle that they were going to do. And then John Cena, Logan Paul, and Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes was just kind of this tag team match that felt, you know, lots of star power, as much star power as maybe they have in the company, at least with their top 2 belts being there. And then Cody Rhodes, who had previously lost it, and Logan Paul, whose star power goes beyond WWE. But it just felt like, so what, you know, what's this match for? What's it going to do? Does the winner get anything? I mean, what are we necessarily getting out of this? And I thought that when going back and looking at the show, I love the Cena Paul Uso Rhodes match so much. As much as what we've seen in years, that it would be one of my favorite matches. So this would be the exact type of match I think I would show somebody that hasn't been watching WWE to see kind of what people have been getting into, because it had a lot of had a lot of star power, like I was saying, you know, people that maybe non-wrestling fans would recognize. as well as, I thought some pretty good storytelling to it. Logan Paul with that moonsault that he went back over through the announcers table on Jey Uso. So you had that level of athleticism, and then you had the surprise return of R-Truth, the people going crazy. So that main event, I was giving it almost like almost like a popcorn match for me. Like, I wasn't all that interested in it, and they pulled out and they made something great out of it, which is why it was there, placed in the main event spot there. They're going to go out with a bang. So that kind of made it interesting. Figured maybe a CM Punk or some sort of involvement here, but you ultimately you get R-Truth, which is kind of the lead story in wrestling right now. People are trying to figure out, how long was this planned? Was this all an angle? Because the R-Truth side of things is, of course, he was released after running an angle with John Cena and then being buried on the next night at Raw. He's worked with the company for years, and releasing him since then, crowds have said they wanted R-Truth. The different personalities in the ring have somewhat acknowledged it, but for the most part, it just kind of has taken over this new life that people maybe didn't see coming. And very rarely in wrestling do the fans get what they want, and very rarely do they get what they want so soon. R-Truth makes his return and beats down John Cena, costs him the victory, allowing Cody Rhodes to get his finisher and get the win in that one. So I mean, we could try to bury that and talk about it later, but that's the lead story in wrestling right now. Is how much of this R-Truth thing do you think was planned out? How much of this was maybe a reaction to the chance, a reaction to online fellow wrestlers? Everybody was frustrated that R-Truth was not being fired, but his contract was up and they were not going to renew it at WWE.
It's hard because when have they really ever listened to the fans, right? They do what's best for money. And I read an article that it was kind of on R-Truth's side too, that he wasn't really responding because he didn't really like the deal until Nick Khan, who he's up there. I don't really know his title, but I know
upper management.
Upper management, until it was him that came face to face and kind of, I guess, brought him back. But I don't know. I think it's a work, because you like I said, WWE rarely really listens to the fan. Because I mean, LA Knight would have won a Money in the Bank 3 years ago. Certain things like that. Chad Gable would have been the one that dethroned Gunther. There are perfect opportunities, perfect scenarios where the fans have really voiced what they wanted. I guess Jey Uso winning the Money in the Bank or Royal Rumble and being here.
Daniel
I guess
Bryan, those types of movements before.
Those kinds. But there's a lot. There's a lot you can go and list. Like, guys were just as hot as it's ever been. Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
They don't really pull the trigger. They just kind of do it with that there on that. So I 100% think it's a work on that. But man, it was phenomenal. I love how the announce you can tell it was an African American guy in that hood, right? In the mask, and they're still like, oh, who is this? And right away, because like when he's beating on John, like you can kind of see, and that I'm like, I was 100%. I was like, that's R-Truth. I was like, that's him. I was like, that's gonna be, it's gonna be a great pop, a great story. People are joking that it's not R-Truth, it's actually Ron Killings, which is his real name. We might maybe get a serious version of R-Truth for the first time since like 2011, I think it's been. So yeah, like you said, that was kind of the big thing. I like how on Friday Night SmackDown, the fans were yelling, "We want truth." John Cena ran with it, that you guys can't handle the truth. You guys, he kind of was running, and I was, the whole time I'm like, they're talking about R-Truth, man. They're not talking about stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty funny that he acknowledged it on there. But yeah, like you said, that main event, was kind of set up. It was kind of odd. I also love the fact that I think John Cena is really trying to ruin wrestling, because it's been known he calls his spots right in the ring, kind of obvious. But yesterday he was really with the camera on him, like telling Jay and Cody, this is what we're doing with the camera on him. So I thought that was hilarious, because he's saying he's going to ruin wrestling. So, main event, fun stuff going on there. Like you said, I'm not a huge Logan Paul fan, but I can't deny he's great in the ring. So everything he was doing. John Cena got pinned. That's kind of I think, outside of the R-Truth part of it is, once again, they're kind of going down this road of your champion of champion, your greatest of all time, just got pinned.
Well, and that's what as you're watching that too, and I go through those thoughts of like, would I show my friends this match or whatever to try to get him interested? It's just weird because you'd go through the story of like this is the greatest of all time based on his wins, and you would say, well, why in the middle of it are the fans chanting you can't wrestle like him? So it's just wrestling is of course more than just what you can do in the ring, and John Cena is so fantastic at all the other stuff and his star getting, shining brighter over the years. But he is just so. I mean, watching his match, you can see him call the spots more often than not. Sometimes you can hear it.
Yeah.
It doesn't always come off as like, really, that's the guy you guys chose as the best of all time, or like it's obviously scripted, but to get him to that position. So that's kind of interesting. Of course, there were some low spots in the match too. We always make fun of Jey Uso's spear. He had yet another very weak spear to John Cena on the announcer's table. It's usually supposed to be, oh my gosh, they laid on the announce table. Looked like somewhat of a soft land. I don't think Cena did it any help with taking it either. But man, they've got to do. I don't know how. Like at some point, you just got to recognize that is not working.
Yeah, it's not a good spear. And the funny part about that too is when I was watching it, I was like, oh man, they must make these tables built different, right? Because before, when we were growing up, if you did a spot on the table, that table was breaking. Like it was done. And now I've noticed throughout the years, tables don't break. And of course, last night it didn't break because it immediately right after that, Logan Paul jumps and does that moonsault. That was beautiful. But I don't know. It's been a couple years of Jey Uso doing the worst spear of all time. It's not getting any better. Like you said, I get it because he can talk. His entrance is still great. But if you're gonna chant you can't wrestle at John Cena, you might as well do that at Jey Uso as well, because his two signature moves are supposed to be a spear and a super kick. And every time he does it, there's a botch. Like when you were gone, he hit the mic when he tried to do it on Logan Paul. And then I think the next week he straight up, you can tell, like got Logan Paul in the chin. Like he didn't fake that one. So I don't know. That's your world heavyweight champion. That's supposed to be your AB to the John Cena's A1 in the company. And that's what you got. So yeah, you're not wrong with that. I hate to say it, but John Cena has lost a step. I think you can really, really tell. Like you said, he didn't really sell it the greatest there. He's a little bit slower. He kind of had those funny antics as it was. He kind of always oversold everything. And all that. Now that he's a little bit older, it's like he's not overselling it. That's just how he reacts. And then when R-Truth hit him with the title, he puts his hands, blocks it, while Cody takes it. You can tell some differences there. So I thought that was funny. But, like I said, I mean, they were pushing this match here to say Logan Paul is the future, which, hey, if he was your world heavyweight champ, I mean, that's going to do some ratings for the WWE because we know everything outside. He's like one of the biggest YouTubers, celebrities, things like that. And I mean, if that means they kind of take it away from Jey Uso for a little bit, I wouldn't be too opposed to that, because literally every time he speaks or does a promo, it's so cringe because it's just yeet. It's 4 words, yeet, and he's like, no yeet, things like that. And I'm just like, man, I was sitting there Friday, watching it, kind of like how you said, if I'm going to tell somebody to watch it, he's your world heavyweight champ and he's saying yeet, something that was cool in like 2015. That's hard.
He's certainly still getting over with the crowd. So it is interesting. He's got a matchup with Gunther tomorrow night. And they're really telling the story. I mean, that was part of the moonsault was that he's really taking a shot to those ribs. And so we'll see what has happened. Of course, last time he faced Gunther at WrestleMania, he made him tap out. So there's probably going to be part of that story too. Is Gunther going to tap? I'm sure they're going to use that as well. But it is interesting to see, how that's evolving. And really, I mean, I thought that was part of, again, this match is just so fascinating because, again, I wasn't all that intrigued by it despite the star power going in. And only after kind of they went through it did I realize you've got your 2 biggest belts in here. You've got Logan Paul, you've got Cody Rhodes, who's the Cody Rhodes era, whether it's been through our favorite booking or not, has been some of the best wrestling in, decade and a half at least. So I mean, they just had so much into this match, and you kind of wondered, well, what are the stakes? When we get out of it, is that Cody pinned John Cena through R-Truth's help. It'll be interesting to see R-Truth, or like you said, talks about maybe him going by Ron Killings this time around, being more of a serious type of wrestler now. But I think with Cody pinning John Cena, that kind of opens up, okay, Cody deserves another shot at John Cena. And there's only so many dates left with John Cena. I think we knew and know that one of them is going to be with Cody Rhodes. Do you think this is all an angle to get Cody Rhodes to beat John Cena and kind of further his way up?
I mean, I think it is, but I think it's too soon. But you do have SummerSlam, which is 2 months away, I think, which is supposed to be, another big one there.
Yeah.
Which is where they might angle that for, but or I guess they're doing King of the Ring again. They're doing all those. I don't know, because I know Cody's phenomenal. Cody's great. Cody gets great pops, all that stuff. But it's another one of those. His reign, like you said, when he was champion, when you talk about it, wasn't great, and it's not really just his fault. It's a lot of the booking too. But when you're the undisputed champ or the world heavyweight champ, you're the guy that's putting the company on his back, right? And I don't know, just this last run was just, his story to get there to defeat Roman Reigns was phenomenal, amazing. Then it's when you get it, what do you do after that? And it wasn't great. So I don't know. I'd rather see R-Truth and John Cena kind of go at it again, because that seems to be an angle. But I don't want John Cena to lose this belt so fast, because he's still, he's got a couple other guys that I think he's got to run through, or just have matches to before he goes back to Cody again.
Well, I think you're right though with the Logan Paul stuff. You said it before, and that was kind of the angle they were going with. Maybe he could help John Cena ruin wrestling. I think they could do a pretty good job of like putting it all in place, of having all these heels or John Cena's, group kind of, and he doesn't necessarily have one now, but like just these kind of things play out. And then have this ultimate premium live event payoff where John Cena's final way, you beat him. And so it's part of the story of wrestling. And that's what, coming off of WrestleMania, you've got to put a story together to keep people interested, because it's the start of the season, right? So, I mean, a lot of people just tune in for Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. So for the long-term, watchers of this, they're going to watch for the next year, what's going to make it interesting. And this Cena thing and ruining wrestling, I think is something that gives you a lot of legs and a lot of things you can do with it. But I mean, a lot to still kind of talk about here throughout this. Cena and Paul obviously having their own issues. We could see that in the weeks leading up to this match here. I know, again, you're not necessarily a big fan of Logan Paul, but his story too is his inexperience and his interest in maybe getting views basically outside. So they used that in this match as well. And I thought that was pretty cool with the drone. The drone that was part of his interest, and then even part of the wrestling match throughout it. So unique spots for him, stuff that you can kind of go viral on. And then his, I keep bringing it up, but the moonsault that he put on the announcer's table. Wrestling's been around a long time. I've seen too many guys do that. And he's one of those guys, sometimes you worry about that. The WCW basically, for the final nail in the coffin, was making David Arquette their world champion. I mean, that was pretty rough. And so you don't want to just hand over, celebrities. I mean, it's happened in wrestling way too much, where outside celebrities come in and just punk your wrestlers and then leave, and it doesn't look great. But Logan Paul, he's seriously, I mean, I wouldn't be like, this doesn't make any sense, this is silly, if he one day wins a world champion.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. I think we've talked about it in the past. He's a true wrestler. He's proven. It's funny that they did the drone spot, because I think in one of his first matches that really caught everybody's attention, he did that drone where I think he caught it and jumped on a table. Wasn't the backwards moonsault, but it was or the moonsault all there. I think he just jumped on a frog splash somebody. So I mean, you're right. I don't like a lot of what he does outside of like kind of WWE and the personal thing, but unfortunately, a lot of people that we maybe look up to, a lot of wrestlers, you kind of got to maybe be like, all right, let's close the personal, and kind of just keep what the character does. And for his part, I mean, he plays the arrogant, egotistical guy to perfection. If you listen to a lot of his promos, he says, I'm the best, it's me. And he's only like 26, 27. Feels like he's been around for a lot longer than that. On there. And then something else you mentioned, there could be a rift between Cena and Logan Paul. Logan Paul accidentally hit John Cena, I think, with the moonsault halfway through that match.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. And I mean, John Cena took the pin, not Logan Paul. So technically there could be something else there. And then something else happened, where throughout the night in the Money in the Bank, that could kind of put a wrinkle in maybe the Cody Rhodes and John Cena feud there with that whoever won that Money in the Bank.
Yeah. Well, you could say. You can
So, I don't want to ruin it if they didn't see it. I'll let you do that since it's your first time back on it, your show on there. So I want you to go ahead and introduce who that was.
Well, I would think to properly talk about Gunther and Jey Uso tomorrow, I think we probably have to. Is that Seth Rollins did win Money in the Bank, did not cash in here. What do you see happening through this? I mean, it's one of those deals where can Gunther afford another loss? If he does, are we heading down now he doubts himself, not necessarily great story arc for Gunther, Jey Uso. I mean, they're really beating him up here. Maybe you have some outside interference, maybe a Seth Rollins at the end of the night, although that would be a very quick turnaround with the briefcase, but does he need to hold the briefcase for long? So, I still think this show probably could have used Gunther and Jey Uso. If you really needed somebody else for the tag team, I think you could have probably found somebody else into it. But they're obviously using it for part of the storytelling. But it is something that is going to draw me into Raw tomorrow night to see how they fix that. I feel, just with what the company has done and made it this way, obviously you could do best out of 3, but to go to WrestleMania and make that decision, I don't think you change your mind in a month later with the same 2 going at it.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is there is going to be interference, and it's going to be a non-disqual or a disqual non-disqual no interference. Yeah. And then Seth is going to try to cash in, but it's not going to happen. I think that's ultimately what's going to end up happening because, as you said, Gunther can't afford a loss. I don't think you can take the belt off of Jey just yet. As much as I'm not liking his reign as champ, you can't do that. And you're right. Seth Rollins doesn't need that briefcase, but Seth Rollins having the briefcase, I think, can make the storyline very intriguing. And as I kind of mentioned it, I would like him to at least kind of act like a threat towards John Cena. I kind of want to see what that interaction is. I like when the Money in the Bank winner has it and they kind of show up at shows, and Seth Rollins, they're building up this group that doesn't have a name, that's something you've mentioned that's something they need to kind of get together. But, he just kind of goes around and has, Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker just kind of terrorizing everybody and, teasing it. I mean, this is one of those, the person that won the briefcase, I would be okay with them holding it for a while.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's going to create that tension on there, especially with it being Seth Rollins. But yeah, I just think somebody's going to interfere tomorrow, and that match isn't going to end because that's kind of what Netflix and kind of how those main events have been going. There hasn't, outside of maybe that first one, that first Netflix episode that was so big. Outside of that, all the main events have pretty much had an interference on them.
Yeah, you're not really seeing title changes one that sticks out that you did long ago was on SmackDown on Fox when they had Brock Lesnar squash Kofi right away, but that was the opening to SmackDown on Fox. This is just, unless they're really frustrated about their Netflix viewing, then maybe.
Cool. I don't know if you saw, but I think it was 2 weeks ago, they had one of the lowest ratings on Netflix that Netflix has ever had for a show like that. So
yeah,
they could be panicking already. There's a lot of rumors out there that TKO doesn't have a whole lot of money, and things like that. So, they can't go sour with this Netflix deal. I'll just say that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Then you did mention some other thing that I wanted to address too, which is the King of the Ring. The King of the Ring in Queen of the Ring tournaments coming up. I like what they're doing. They're kind of making it basically so you can punch your ticket if you are the King or Queen of the Ring to fight at SummerSlam for that championship. So it's kind of like a Royal Rumble, moved earlier in the season. I think that adds obviously to the King of the Ring. I mean, they've tried for years. Once you're the king, you get a crown, you walk around, and in 4 months, 3 months, sometimes you forget about it. Nia Jax, I think, wore it for 2 weeks, and you just kind of slid it off to the side. So I think it adds a little bit more to that, and you don't have to go through that being somebody's character, which I just don't think always helps. Booker T. There's certain guys that have pulled it off, but for the most part, I don't think it necessarily helps out whoever wins it to do that. Do you like that though? Because it does. I like it because what it does for the King of the Ring tournament. I don't like it as much because then it's kind of taking the gimmick away from Royal Rumble a little bit more of the specialty. If there's always an event around the corner that's going to give you an opportunity, it takes away from that opportunity that had been there originally.
I'm kind of with you there, but I'm okay with it just off the fact that I think they realize they're maybe struggling creatively and having a long number one contenders match. Essentially, what this is, they're going one-on-one against each other to make it to the King and Queen of the Ring to have a shot at that title. This is an easy way for them to maybe put two wrestlers together that have no storyline or anything, but you can just say, all right, here's one match for this, here's two match for that. So that's kind of one thing I'm okay with. And I don't know, I like number one contenders matches. I love like when they have those gauntlet matches, things that, so I feel like this is just going to be like month long kind of that, that's kind of where they're going. And with the Royal Rumble, it's a little, because this one, I think they're doing one-on-ones, right, against everybody, and you kind of advance
move
that
your way through a tournament.
So it's still a little bit different than the Royal Rumble where it's everybody, you're kind of throwing it out. But they got to get it right. It's got to be somebody that has a legitimate chance, or one of the champs has to lose, because if you have this whole big event, do it. Yeah, they're King, Queen of the Ring, whatever, and they get a shot, and neither one of them dethrone that champ. Did it really even matter?
Yeah,
I don't think it did.
Then you're questioning what you watched for a month and a half. There.
Yep. And that would kind of strike maybe some of us viewers wrong, even though it could be a fun journey. Just there's got to be a little bit of a payoff.
Yeah. Well, like you did say something that I think is great, is that it does give stakes to matches that we can see on weekly television here in the next couple of weeks, and that's fantastic. Money in the Bank obviously provided that. I thought they did a good job of having those qualifier matches. Not every one of the winners I would have chosen.
Yeah.
And would have maybe done a few different things there, but definitely helps to have some stakes on those matches. All right, we've got still the Money in the Bank matches to talk about, as well as a women's Intercontinental and men's Intercontinental Championship fought for there at Money in the Bank. We'll do that next year on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait, apply now.
John Henry's has a brand new membership club to protect your entire home in one program. With a VIP and a deluxe option, we will help you find the plan that best fits your needs. Receive discounts on services and equipment, priority service, complimentary inspections, and so much more. Protect your home's plumbing, heating, cooling, and electrical systems all in one membership. Call John Henry's to learn more.
435-5555. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating and Air.
And electrical.
Hello.
Angela, we have to break up.
But why?
Because you're a robot and I'm just a guy trying to get better internet.
It's Ella Fiber, isn't it? I always knew you wanted faster speeds. My contract isn't good enough for you.
Face it, Angela. They let me talk to real people.
Press 4 to break my heart. Oh wait, you already did.
Visit allofiber.com to switch today.
At Parkview Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not just their professional care that sets them apart, but their warm staff and state-of-the-art facilities. Whether it's for a routine checkup or a comprehensive medical procedure, at Parkview, your pet isn't just another number, but a valued member of their caring family. Visit them at pahlincoln.com today and in person just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Parkview Animal Hospital, your pet, their passion, for happier, healthier, furry friends.
Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits is your place in North Lincoln to go for all your needs in wine, spirits, and beer. They also have a large variety of cigars in their walk-in humidor, and they have a top-notch walk-in temperature-controlled high-end wine room. Plus, you can enjoy free samples from their tasting bar. There's only one place to go for all your needs for spirits and cigars. That's Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits on North 27th Street in Lincoln.
Are you a skilled mechanic looking for your next opportunity? Nebco is hiring. They're looking for experienced mechanics to join our family-owned team. They offer competitive wages, great benefits, service trucks, OEM-level diagnostic software, and career growth opportunities. Apply today at nebco.com. Positions include lead and A-level mechanics for the Nebco shop. Learn more at nebco.com. If you're driven and ready to grow with a company that's been around since 1908, apply today at nebco.com.
Noticing more dust at home? It may be time for duct cleaning from Bryant. Breathe easy and healthy. Call 467-1111. Bryant Air Conditioning, Heating, Electrical, and Plumbing.
At Valentino's, we're on a mission for tradition. On every slice, for every bite. Golden baked crust, cooked to perfection every time. Savory sweet sauce that's made from our own secret recipe. Loaded with the perfect amount of fresh toppings and melty mozzarella cheese. It's the tradition that Nebraskans have come to love. From game day to every day. Valentino's. Taste the tradition.
Empower a child today with the Teammates Mentoring Program. Hope is only a conversation away when you choose to share your talent, time, and heart with a child. Together, you can build a relationship based on strengths and chart a brighter future, 1 week at a time. Find out how you can be a mentor by visiting LincolnTeammates.org. Become what you needed as a kid by joining the Teammates Mentoring Program today. When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics club and space club and stuff like that. But what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting clubs? Nah, forget that. How about margarita clubs and old-fashioned clubs? Get to Upside Bar and Lounge for the best clubs in town. Try all 10 varieties of Upside margaritas or old fashions and take home a free souvenir glass. Grab the whole crew and pair it with Taco Night on Mondays or Whiskey Wednesdays. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lake.
Back to Nuclear Heat with your host, Jake Bockoven, on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
We are back here on Nuclear Heat talking about Money in the Bank from last night, actually, from WWE. We went through the main event with John Cena and Logan Paul. Coming up short, thanks to R-Truth, as Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes get the win there. Just as we wanted to open up the show, talking about kind of the biggest event that was going on, or the biggest storyline coming out of Money in the Bank. It's interesting because I don't know if you would deem this year's Money in the Bank a success, considering the fact that that maybe the Money in the Bank winners aren't the main storyline coming out. The fact that they're both veterans maybe doesn't necessarily, it's not like, okay, they give an up-and-comer, here's their opportunity. So I think that kind of played into it, but we can kind of dive into some of those bigger things once we get through these individual matches. Let's start with the women's Money in the Bank, as they did to open up the show. Alexa Bliss, Julia, Roxanne Perez, Stephanie Vacour, Rhea Ripley, and Naomi all battling for the Money in the Bank. Lots of action in this one. Dual code reds on the ladders looked pretty cool. Stephanie Vacour's devil kiss on the ladder to Rhea Ripley was pretty good. They're kind of telling the story throughout this match. Kind of three veterans against the newcomers. Also, they played heavily in the fact that Rhea Ripley's never been in a ladder match, so how would she know what to do? I like always how they do that. It's not that much more difficult or much more you wouldn't think for a world champion to understand the ladder aspect of it, but they use that to their advantage, as always, to kind of tell some of the story. So I thought that was pretty good. And altogether, couple spots that could have been a little bit better. We make fun of the ladders and how easy they are to work. They were very difficult for a while for Julia and Roxanne Perez, as they were trying to get this spot of like basically collapsing the ladder on Rhea Ripley, and they couldn't collapse it. And Rhea's took a fake hit, was acted like she was going to get hit because she expected it. And so, it wasn't the cleanest of clean matches, but it was still a pretty good one. Ultimately, you have Naomi win the Money in the Bank after tipping over a ladder that Rhea and Bliss were climbing on. Again, that's another spot I thought could have been a little bit, looked a little bit better. Rhea and Bliss kind of stepped down the ladder rungs a little bit and then waited for Naomi to kind of push them over. And then it was still kind of sold as devastating. She got up and won it. So lots to kind of break down there. I thought there was good action. Roxanne Perez, Julia, and Stephanie Vacour are becoming more and more household names, are kind of like the younger group coming up, or at least the new faces and I'm a little bit more. I'm always a little bit hesitant to buy into the next NXT star or who that is. I'm getting a little warmed up to all of them, so I think that in that way it did well for them in the WWE as well. However, I will say I'm not the most excited about Naomi winning the Money in the Bank. I do think her character, it fits pretty well for and all that. But I'm just not. I'm not too much into her ongoing feud that I assume this is going to have Jade Cargill come in and maybe disrupt her from winning Money in the Bank, or using that when she wants to cash it in. Maybe not. Maybe they'll go a different direction. But I guess the more interesting thing to me here is that women's Money in the Bank is 100%.
Yeah.
Every time that somebody's won it, they've cashed it successfully. I just don't know if I see Naomi as a world champion.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going to go with it. Is they kept saying they mentioned that a lot. It's going to be 100%. It's 100% cashing. And I was thinking throughout the match, I'm like, man, they might give it to one of these veterans. Outside of Rhea, I don't think they do that to Rhea. I was like, but man, they might give it to Alexa Bliss or Naomi and have them be the first one to do a failed cash-in. And then when Naomi won, I thought, man, Jade Cargill they're still in that storyline. She never kind of finished it with Bianca, and Bianca's out hurt. That's a storyline that's still kind of ongoing. So she's kind of got a lot of people, and I'm with you. My two least favorite I wanted to win were Naomi and Rhea. Just off of the fact with Naomi, I guess I just, she has that existing storyline with Jade, so I just didn't know where it was going. And then with Rhea, I just don't think she needed that briefcase because she can kind of demand a title shot whenever she wants to. My pick would have been Alexa Bliss. I thought, returning, that kind of would have been fun there. Or you give it to maybe Stephanie, and who's been kind of on a roll. I think she just lost her NXT title to become a full-time Raw wrestler there. So there's that. But I truly do think Naomi's going to be the first one to fail the cash in. And you were being very generous when you said there were a couple spots. There was a lot of botches. It looked very clunky. It kind of looked just out of sorts. There was one spot I appreciated when I think Alexa Bliss went to go push the ladder, and instead of like holding on for dear life and falling all the way, Roxanne and Julia jumped off before she like pushed it over. So I was like, oh, they can react. They don't just hold on to it and wait to fall, out there. But, there was a lot of, when they did the finishers together, there was a lot of looking over, waiting. And then the funniest part was, like you said, the ladder not folding, but then Julia went to go throw the other ladder on top, and it just bounced off the ring, the ropes, and bounced back. And it was supposed to trap Rhea in there.
Okay.
And but it was the big ladder. So it went, it like ping ponged back over. And I laughed. And then they had a really hard time burying her under those other ladders.
Those ladders kept
they kept sliding.
Do it. Yeah.
and you can tell there's supposed to be a couple on her, but they kept sliding off. They throw it on. They just
didn't position them very well.
Yeah. And so, but like you said, a lot of that could be the very inexperienced. There's 4 of them that had never been in a ladder match before. So all in all, though, I to kind of answer one of your other questions there, I'd say out of the women's portion, this is probably one of the weaker Money in the Banks they've had in the last 8 years they've had. I'd say it's probably the worst one.
Well, and I think too, I know Naomi's got her heel character, but it's always really nice to see somebody that maybe hasn't won.
Yeah.
And that's why you kind of mentioned Vancouver there. Roxanne Perez, I think, would have been fascinating with kind of the upcoming battle. I think that we had envisioned with the rest of the Judgment Day there with Liv Morgan. I thought that would have been interesting. Julia's got a nice character. I mean, that would have been at least something that could have been something that kind of worked with her character, at least to give her kind of something moving. I don't know. And I it's nothing against Naomi. It's just that feud. I've always had the problem that they kind of took Bianca Belair out of it, and then they never finish it. It's just kind of, and it's even through WrestleMania, if one side's winning one night, somebody's winning the next night, then WrestleMania happens, one side wins, the next side wins, the next week, one side wins. And then what did WrestleMania mean? It's just kind of going through it. So we'll see if they continue that. Maybe this is a turn in what Naomi's programming will be moving forward. But it's hard to tell too. I mean, you look at, sometimes you want to stick to what show they're going to be on. But is she going to provide a threat, or who's she going to go after here? And Tiffany Stratton obviously holding the belt on one brand, and then you got the leader of Damage Control, Io Sky, on the other brand. So, and I just don't, I'll put it this way: I'm not waiting like that's Naomi against Io Sky. That's an all-time. I can't wait to see either one. So I think they've got a ways to go to make it look like to prove that this was the right choice. But it does give Naomi, something. And I think again with her character's change, the caution, all sorts of that, this can work well. And that's kind of, you get to the question of, do you hold the Money in the Bank? Typically, we've seen with these, when they've had two in one night, one would cash in, one would use it as an accessory for months. Is this an accessory for Naomi and Seth Rollins, who we'll get to later, for a long period of time, or is it a quick attempt to cash in?
Yeah, to go back to the first point you put there were 4 women that we've never seen face Tiffany Stratton or Io Sky. Naomi and Rhea Ripley were the 2. That's why they were my least favorite, because who was Tiffany Stratton's second title defense against? Naomi. We've seen it. Yeah. Io Sky and Naomi, they've battled. We've seen it. It's nothing new. And with this Money in the Bank contract, and we could say that with Seth Rollins, but with Seth Rollins, I don't want him to, we'll talk about that later, but it's a little bit different. But whereas with Naomi, we just saw kind of that story, be ran there. So that's kind of one of the things there. But, I think with Naomi, it's probably going to be an accessory on there. They'll, because it's going to probably be one of those. She's going to try to cash in a lot. Jade's going to always be there on her corner, which is why I didn't want her to win that, because Jade's always going to be there. Unless they do a whole, what they did to Otis, maybe Jade and Beyond, or Jade and Naomi are going to have a fight for that cut, for that briefcase or something like that, make it a little bit interesting. But I think she's going to keep trying to cash in, and it's just not going to be successful for a while.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. We'll see. I still continue with my prediction that she's the first women's Money in the Bank holder to not successfully cash in. We'll see if that plays out. Let's jump to the men's. We can get into the Intercontinental stuff here in a little bit. The men's Money in the Bank: Seth Rollins, Solo Sikoa, LA Knight, Andrade, El Grande Americano, and Penta, all in there. Of course, this matchup had some spots in it as well, but ultimately a lot of it was kind of the interruptions that we saw from Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. Of course, on behalf of Seth Rollins, come out. Jacob Fatu and JC Mateo come out and interfere for Solo to kind of even the odds. But then Jacob Fatu does turn on Solo, who we saw on SmackDown, said that in different words, but said that Fatu was stupid. And so, Fatu kind of got wind of that. So you could see it coming from a mile away. But anyway, you do get the turn. Fatu says, "I hate you" to Solo. So we've definitely got that feud coming up. Of course, all of this with the Fireball ladder out there. So you got to get your marketing done out there as well. LA Knight had some close spots. It was, Penta, I think, is excellent in any match he's in, but ultimately Seth Rollins climbs the ladder and gets the victory. And he obviously was the favorite going into this one. Kind of like you said with Rhea, does he need this? I mean, he could pretty much get an opportunity if he wanted to, because he's on the top of the card. But I think it's great because he's got the most famous cash in of all time. So for him to win his second one here, it just kind of brings you back to, okay, that's our heel Seth Rollins that we know. The best heel Seth Rollins character we've had was when he was the Money in the Bank holder last time and cashed in famously at WrestleMania on Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. So I it's got a little bit of history there. It gives him some power and obviously some potential spots. What I don't like is, the same type of thing where you kind of think about, is he going to successfully cash in? Are they using this for CM Punk to stop it from him? If that's the case, you already have Seth Rollins and CM Punk without this, in the middle of it. So there's different ways to kind of look at it, but it does make Seth Rollins in this group that they've been building. Again, they need a name. Had all the momentum coming out of WrestleMania. Still kind of feels like the cool new group in the WWE. Still they're supposed to be heels, but they're getting cheered for. Yeah. They're getting barked at and all that. So it gives them a little bit of power. So I like it, but at the same time, it was somewhat predictable. I think the Fatu angle was supposed to be kind of the big. I don't even know if you'd call it surprise, because they lined that up right as well too. So It was a little paint by the numbers, but I liked it.
Yeah. You're kind of taking a lot of my points there. With that,
I talked for like 60 seconds.
No, it's all good. But what I was going to say is, I think Seth Rollins gets a little bit of grace because of that cash in, as you said, the greatest cash in of all time. That I still, when I rewatch it, I can remember, I was living in North Boston, a bunch of roommates. We saw him come in, we were like, there was like 5 of us just going crazy, and when he did it, we're like mind blown. That was just the greatest cash. You did not expect it, just Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar going at it, and boom, here comes Seth Rollins to cash in.
Yeah.
And that thing was amazing. So, he gets a little bit of grace there. And, he has an angle where he wants to rule the WWE, right? You're Mr. Money in the Bank. You kind of just, like you said, he could kind of have opportunities anywhere. He can kind of now, without having to wrestle anybody, take a title, so it kind of, a little bit more grace for Seth Rollins there. And also, I think as kind of a John Cena fan here, I want him to kind of go into a program where he's teasing John Cena for that title. So, on there. So that's kind of what I'm really going with here. On that is I kind of want Seth Rollins to hold on to it for just a little bit there and tease both guys. I don't want him to go after that World Heavyweight Championship. He had it. He was the first one, kind of did it. I want him to go after John Cena's title, and which is why I want John Cena to hold on. Don't want him to lose it to Cody, and all that stuff. So there's some fun stuff there. And I believe Solo Sikoa said that Jacob Fatu is all gas, no brains.
There it is.
That's kind of what turned it on there. And I said it before, Solo has grown on me. He was hilarious in the Money in the Bank last night. There was that angle where he threw out Seth Rollins and then he tried to align himself with every guy. He was like, LA Knight, he did the he did the Andrade bump, and he's like, Zero Mego for, and when Fatu held his foot from getting the briefcase, he's up there, he's like struggling. He's like, why can't I get up there?
Yeah.
Like everything he's been doing has been just amazing. And, Solo Sikoa babyface, that's probably coming. And I think that's going to be good there. And then there was that spot where LA Knight almost killed El Grande Americano. I don't know if you saw that, where he suplexed him off that fireball ladder.
Oh yeah.
But there was a ladder there, and I think Chad Gable, we're just going to call it there to make it easy.
Yeah.
His head was like a centimeter from hitting that thing. And that could have been pretty bad.
Well, I've got to ask you, as you brought it up, as an LA Knight fan, I know you wanted it 3 years ago. This is now 3 Money in the Banks that he has not won. It didn't necessarily feel like the right time, but it would also didn't necessarily feel like it would have been an awful time. The crowd's still with him.
Yeah.
At some point, they've either got to pull the trigger or you're not going to have that crowd.
Yeah, and once again, he was the runner-up, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, he was the guy that was pretty much going to win it, and something happens. And, I guess just as an LA Knight fan, you just kind of you're kind of used to it. You just kind of live with it. Kind of like, unfortunately, kind of like being fans of maybe some of the sports teams we're fans of. You have all these expectations. You want them to be great, but you know what? You're just happy that they're winning games, and they're in some of these. Are you
as big of an LA Knight fan as you were? Do you think, or do you think the bookings kind of cooled you off on it?
I think it's kind of cooled me off just a little bit on it. And a lot of his storylines. I mean, when he was a U.S. title, it was pretty Holder. It was pretty boring. He lost it to Shinsuke. Andrade. It was names like that, and it just wasn't great on there. So I don't think I'm as big of an LA Knight fan as I was. But I still want the guy to have success. And I mean, if you would have won the Money in the Bank, I'd right back, like full horn, let's go, on this thing. But I'm now holding on maybe that he could be the favorite to win the King of the Ring.
Yeah.
Second place again, we could talk about he maybe, he could have dethroned Roman Reigns. He had an opportunity there if it wasn't for, some interference again, kind of like all Roman Reigns wins there. But, so he was so close, but yet, so far. But yeah, as you said, this one was probably the most predictable one. Seth Rollins was kind of the only. I mean, Penta's great, new. Chad Gable or El Grande Americano, whatever we call him, not a real character. And then Andrade, I'm sorry, Andrade, you're not married to Charlotte Flair anymore. You're not going to get a rub. And then who was the last?
Well, Solo.
Oh yeah, and then Solo. Pretty much, it was just for the Jacob Fatu interference. On there. But I mean, it was fine. Just it wasn't, like you said, they weren't throwing each other off the WWE building, they did during the COVID era. So that was, who was it that got thrown?
There's two guys. I know Rey Mysterio is one of the guys that got thrown off there.
But then they disappeared on the next episode, and everyone's like, "All right, they're alive. It wasn't real." It wasn't that, but it's still, Money in the Bank. And now I think, to me, I know I'm a little bit different there, but I like that Seth Rollins wanted and now has this briefcase that he can kind of be a threat with.
Yeah. I like the results. I think they're fine. They'll work. I just think Money in the Bank every year, you're kind of waiting to see, is this, are we going to have an all-time spot or all-time moment or something very memorable? I think these very quickly kind of get lost in the history of the Money in the Bank matches. Like I said, they're not even the storyline coming out of this Money in the Bank premium live event as much as R-Truth and that main event there. But let's take a quick break. We've got the Intercontinental matches to talk about when we wrap things up here on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals just like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait, apply now.
Several irrigation contractors in Lincoln go out of business every year, leaving sprinkler system orphans begging for service. The folks at Judson Irrigation shed a tear for these little fellas. They've been coddling these orphans for more than 40 years. From redesign, repairing, replacing, and restoring, remember the Judson Irrigation Orphanage.
Call the Judson Irrigation Orphanage 402-420-6277 or judsonirrigation.com.
Rosie's Sports Bar and Grill, open for lunch and dinner at 1501 Center Park Road, just south of 14th and Highway 2.
The Lincoln Light Guy salutes the men and women of our military and veterans for the sacrifices they've made. Keep them in your thoughts, prayers, and letters from home until these trying times are over. Our troops are fighting hard around the clock to defend our great country and keep freedom alive worldwide. For this, we salute them and may God bless America. This from Lincoln Light Guy. Locally owned and operated, installing and servicing permanent, holiday, and special occasion lighting for your home or business.
Shopping for new flooring is different today. Getting your questions answered, making the right selection, getting the best value, and installed quickly and professionally. Visit ostreetcarpet.com or shop our store. We'll answer all your questions and help you make the right choice. You'll be enjoying your new floor in just days for less than you'd pay elsewhere. Carpet, vinyl, wood, laminate, tile, and area rugs. We've got it all.
O Street Carpet.
1732 O Street. Family owned and operated. Always the best value.
When opportunity knocks, you don't want to miss the call. Hamilton Business Technologies makes communication easy and efficient using customized technology, all while putting people first. Whether you're working from the office, at home, or on the go, Hamilton Business Technologies equips your business with the right tools for smooth, professional call handling. Hamilton Business Technologies. Real people, real technology solutions. Learn more at hamiltonisbusiness.com.
Load up on meat and more this spring at The Mercado by Certified Piedmontese with great selections of T-bones, tomahawks, ribeyes, filet mignon, brisket, sirloin, and so much more. The Mercado has locations at 84th and Havelock, 30th and Yankee Hill, and now 85th and Old Cheney in Lincoln, where you can have $2 draft beer every Thursday night from 4 to 8 p.m. and half-price espresso drinks on Fridays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Get to The Mercado today for the best meat in town. Start your Sundays off right with Jeff and Nicole Essink on Fitness Fanatics. Jeff and Nicole discuss health and wellness, how to achieve fitness goals, and more through the life of gym owners and gym goers. It's Fitness Fanatics from 9 to 11 a.m. on Sundays on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Back to Nuclear Heat with your host, Jake Bockoven, on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
That's right. We're back here on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket. We've got some Intercontinental Championships to talk about from the Money in the Bank premium live event from WWE. If you missed our reviews on the other matchups, you can head to theticketfm.com to check that out here in a bit on the podcast page. But a couple of Intercontinental Championships, one that wasn't even really nobody knew it was going to happen going into the day. It's actually spawned from matchup at Worlds Collide that Dominic Mysterio and Octagon Jr. got in a little bit of a fight there. So then Dominic said, well, let's go fight for my championship at Money in the Bank. Dom's still very over with the crowd. You had Dirty Dom chance out there. He hits a 619 and a frog splash for the win to help Dirty Dom. And I think it's kind of interesting, obviously, with WWE buying AAA over the last month or so and kind of integrating a lot of these guys into play. Dominic Mysterio, as well as Rey Mysterio, who was honored there, and Chad Gable, all kind of being intertwined in there. So again, it kind of brought a spotlight to it and gave Mysterio another championship defense, which I was worried after he won it at WrestleMania, he might not have too many of those.
Yeah, it was fast. It made sense. Like you said, it kind of highlighted it. They had all the AAA wrestlers there on the sidelines that Dom kept, like making faces at, doing things like that. Very quick match though. And I had no idea who Octagon Jr. is, which is why they're doing it. I think they're gonna try to bring that in. It'll be another show that probably won't have time to watch, but I'll watch highlights of on there. But and had Liv Morgan on his side, which is always fun there. But yeah, people were kind of talking in the Twitter world before the match, like, hey, don't take this belt off of Dirty Dom. You can't do that just yet because he's still having a great run. I mean, the Judgment Day, while they're losing guys like Carlito and things like that, they're still on TV, and Dom doing his great thing there on that. And I find it curious. I'm just gonna say this. I love how instead of just Dirty Dom, he is now making it an emphasis to say his name is Dirty Dominic Mysterio. Like he's really playing on that, who his dad is there.
Yeah. So they always can come back to that because that's what got him so much heat to begin with. Is the crowd does not like him having turned on his dad. So they've always got that in the background if they need to. The Women's Intercontinental Championship between Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch. These two traded finishers left and right in this match. So it was kind of like and they did that in the previous match. And it was surprising that at least that Lyra Valkyria was able to take the manhandle slam. Now she can just brush him off without apparently that doesn't, even though that Becky Lynch, nobody kicks out of that. Lyra Valkyria, it doesn't hurt her, but ultimately what does hurt her is she does get pinned. And if Becky Lynch grabs a handful of her what would they call that?
Tights
Right?
there.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to say it.
I mean, those aren't tights, but that's what they say, right?
Which is it was funny because the commentators were really like, "Oh, she did," and the hammer angle wasn't great at catching it, so it was just kind of like, "Yeah, I guess." But in any case, Becky Lynch did get the win here. This is clearly headed toward round 3 because Lynch made Valkyria hold up her hand at the end until Valkyria just kind of got tired of that and hit her with the Nightwing before walking out. So I think we're going to see a rematch here. You and I have not always been the biggest fans of Lyra Valkyria's Intercontinental Championship. Part of that was because of the booking. This booking's been exactly what you would want if you're a rookie, to be put over by Becky Lynch, even to this point to now where Becky Lynch gets to kind of get her rub off on this new Intercontinental Championship. Okay, one of the greatest of all times now. It's been important and deemed important enough that they wanted it, and now that they've got it, now Lyra will, I'm assuming at some point, go back and take it away from her. But, I thought that this was a good match. The only thing I don't like is, like I said, I think they've kind of buried the manhandle slam quite a bit.
Yeah, they did there. And like you said, that camera angle, it looked like it was just a rollover, know, and you're like, that's how you ended it. And then they're like, she grabbed the tights. It's like, oh, well, okay, maybe, if they would have shown that, we would have known. On there, but you're right on this. We were kind of talking kind of a stale run. Now one of the best to ever do it has that title. Hopefully she can kind of elevate it while in this feud with Lyra. Because I'm kind of curious, do you think they just run it right back, or do you think they kind of allow Becky to maybe give that title some prestige and go against someone else? Maybe kind of a one-offer. And then Lyra comes in and, is like, hey, I want my chance back.
I would prefer they do it that way, but with the immediate attack, I think it was just kind of like, they even played Lyra's music leaving, which I didn't think, I don't know if, if you didn't win the championship, even though if you get a post-match beatdown, you shouldn't walk away with your music playing.
Yeah, or something happens tomorrow, where Lyra's taken out for a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that. They can spin it that way. I think we're both on the right, the same
Well, and I
wavelength.
remember Bailey should be in the middle of this at some point. She's got to come back in because she was taken out. And so, that should be part of this altogether at some point. So it could turn into a triple threat or something like that moving forward. We'll have to wait and see. Once again, Gunther and Jey Uso tomorrow night. R-Truth is back. Carlito is not. So I am a little bit sad over the time I left that Carlito was let go. And they didn't even give him a send-off. They didn't write him off. He's just gone.
Yep, that's it. He didn't get maybe tomorrow we want Carlito.
That's
chance.
right. Get the Carlito chance going.
Get him back in.
I'm all for it. All right, that'll wrap it up for Nuclear Heat. We'll be back with you next week in 93.7 The Ticket, by the way. Also, we'll be back with you tomorrow morning, but we're going to go send it out to national programming. Early break. We'll be with you bright and early in the morning at 6 o'clock. We'll see you next week here on Nuclear Heat. Lincoln's new craft cocktail lounge is Bar 48 in Lincoln. Located at 2639 North 48th Street, Bar 48 offers everything from cocktails to beer to wine and so much more. With summer right around the corner, you can always enjoy Bar 48's frozen beverages. Follow them on Facebook to stay up to date on their live music performances every Saturday night. Make plans to visit Bar 48 on North 48th Street in the heart of the University Place neighborhood today.
Mike, I've been thinking our house could really use a makeover. How about new siding?
I've been thinking the same thing. Have you heard of James Hardy?
Yes! Sarah down the street had Roofing Service Company install James Hardy siding on their home, and they love it.
Roofing Service Company does have great reviews.
They took her through the design process and made everything super easy.
Roofing Service Company offers expert design and installation. Couple that with James Hardy's durable